While trains sometimes provoke feelings of security and comfort, they can often hide deadly secrets. We'll share two genuine stories tonight about trains that terrified passengers beyond comprehension. The events of our first story occur in 1983. One of the most popular train routes in England was the London-to-Liverpool route. Every day, people would take this train to get to work, see friends, or just get away from the hectic city life. However, there was something off-putting and unsettling about this way that made people discuss. On the late-night train through Essex, passengers began to notice odd occurrences. Some claimed to have witnessed a spirit silently occupying one of the seats, always in the same position. Some claimed to have heard whispers in their ears, but upon turning around, they discovered that nobody was present. Even on hot summer nights, there was a cold in the air. One individual who heard these tales was Susan Fielding, a young journalist. Susan was not a believer in ghosts or other paranormal phenomena. She believed the stories to be the products of people's imaginations. She made the decision to discover the truth for herself. Leaving London late at night on a train to Liverpool, she intended to write an essay dispelling the ghost stories. Susan settled into her train seat on a hot July night. There weren't many passengers on the train. They were strewn about the cars, reading or staring out the windows. With her notepad and pen in hand, Susan took a seat close to the rear of the train, prepared for writing down everything she saw. At first, though, everything seemed normal. The train traveled with ease, the soft cadence of the wheels relieving her anxiety. However, after that, things altered. For a brief moment, the lights above her flickered. It was a strangely warm summer's night when Susan felt a cold draft come through. She made an effort to ignore it, but as the minutes went by, the strange sensation persisted. She noted that the temperature was falling even further and that the air looked heavier. It resembled someone opening a freezer. She heard it, a tiny whisper all of a sudden. She initially believed that someone was conversing in the seat across from her. However, upon glancing around, she found herself alone. The whisper went on, like if it were speaking directly into her ear. She hastily got up to find a seat closer to the front as her heart started racing. Things seemed increasingly odd as Susan passed through the train cars. In the next car, the lights were dimmer and the air seemed more colder. She halted when she reached the center of the train. There was a man seated in one of the window seats. With shadows covering his face, he appeared motionless. Susan could not quite make out his features, but there was something about him that made her heart race. His eyes were dazzling, with their own pale, ghostly light, not with the reflection of the train lights. Susan made an effort to convince herself that it was only a light prank. Blinking, she hoped he would go away. However, the man had vanished when she opened her eyes once more. It seemed as though no one had ever occupied the seat at all. Susan, who was now terrified, ran to the front of the train and started seeking for the conductor. She filled him in on everything, including the whispers, the cold, and the man she saw. The conductor listened patiently, but he nodded slowly rather than brushing it off with a laugh. "You've seen him, haven't you?" he remarked softly. Numerous passengers had reported seeing the same shadowy figure, the conductor explained. A guy had perished in a train accident close to Essex many years prior, and ever since, his ghost has been observed sitting in the same spot and glaring at other passengers. Every night, when the train was almost empty, he would show there. The conductor claimed that although the ghost never hurt anyone, he did leave a spooky, icy feeling in his wake, exactly like Susan had. Susan was too terrified to go back to her seat, so she stayed at the front of the train for the remainder of the journey. Susan got off the train when it eventually arrived at its location, and vowed never to ride the late-night train again. Those who saw the glowing-eyed figure on that train still report seeing him now. His creepy whispers chill them to the bone, and his icy presence lingers in the air. The setting of our second story is the Harz mountain railway in Germany. With breathtaking views, this train travels through stunning mountains and forests. But there is a horrible area known as the Death Tunnel tucked away deep beneath these mountains. Under appalling circumstances, POWs during World War II were made to construct this tunnel. Many people lost their lives there, and others think their ghosts are still imprisoned there. Carl and Anna, two friends, made the decision to travel on the Harz Mountain Railway in 2017. Despite their disbelief in ghosts, they had heard stories about the Death Tunnel. They believed the stories were just stories and were avid readers of history. They weren't expecting anything strange to happen. They were just there to take in the breathtaking view. When they got on the train, the evening of fall was overcast with fog. The ride was serene in the beginning. The train traveled through historic communities and thick forests. Carl and Anna took in the scenery while enjoying the silence. However, the atmosphere aboard the train shifted as they approached the death tunnel. The train seemed to slow down, and the temperature dropped. The once bright and upbeat atmosphere became tense and scary. Carl saw that the other passengers had quieted down as well, as though they were sensing something strange. Everything was completely dark as the train eventually made its way into the tunnel. The train's wheels reverberating off the rails was the only sound heard. It was significantly cooler inside the tunnel than it should have been. They had the impression that the tunnel's walls were closing in on them because of how deep the darkness was. Sitting in silence, Carl and Anna were both worried, though they weren't sure why. They made an effort to convince themselves that the tunnel was ordinary, but something didn't feel quite right. Suddenly, the train's lights flickered and then went out entirely. It was now completely black inside the train. Carl and Anna initially believed it to be a technical issue. Then, though, they heard an odd sound. The sound resembled scratching, as if someone or something was pulling on the trains outside. The sound was faint at first, but with each passing second, it grew closer and louder. Anna clutched Carl's arm as her heart beat. A faint whisper suddenly reverberated throughout the train car. It was ancient and painful, but it was written in German. The identical word was said twice. Hilfe, Hilf, help, help. Carl took out his phone and tried to peek outside the train with the lighting. He could only see the tunnel's dark, wet stone walls. But then they saw them, pale faces pressed to the glass, looking into the train through the fogged-up windows. The features had open eyes and open mouths. They were ghostly white. They appeared afraid, like though they were trapped in a terrible dream. There were about a dozen of them, their lifeless, icy eyes fixed on Carl and Anna. The hushed chatter intensified. With terrified gaze, their faces leaned closer to the glass. Carl and Anna were frozen, too terrified to move from their seats. They were paralyzed. It ended as swiftly as it had begun. The train exploded into the daylight as it left the tunnel. The whispering subsided and the pallid faces vanished. The train began to accelerate, as though it were attempting to get out of the strange black tunnel. Carl and Anna sat in startled silence for the remainder of the ride, attempting to comprehend what had just happened. They asked the conductor if anyone else had seen anything odd when they eventually arrived at their stop. With a knowing smile, the conductor added, "You saw them, didn't you? Those that inhabit the tunnel, it is them who were never able to escape."